We have 4 parts to our presentation. We're going to tell you about who we are, then we're going to tell you about the work that we're presenting, why and what, and then we're going to show you how we collect data, and then we'll show you what we do with all the data that we collect. And then we'll hopefully have some time for Q&A.
So I'm Jude Ayton. I've been working with Perkins Eastman for a couple years now, but been in the industry, like many of us, for 18 plus years, doing everything from BIM management to design technology and that type of stuff. And this is Masha.
Yep, well, Jude and I actually presented a bunch of times, but we usually do it remotely because Jude is in LA and I'm in New York. So this is a unique opportunity for you guys to see us present together in one room. My name is Masha Bekarovsky. I'm a design technology specialist with Perkins Eastman, New York. I've been with Perkins Eastman for about 3 years, and I've been in the architecture industry for over 10 years now. And you're welcome to tweet at me, at Masha Bekarovsky, and we even have a hashtag for this topic, Best of BIM. So just a bit of background about Perkins Eastman. We're pretty big, but not many people know about us. The company was founded in 1981, and we have 15 offices worldwide. And we have 9 US domestic offices and 4 international offices. And we do a bunch of projects, and we do residential work, hospitality, healthcare. A big part of our portfolio are large healthcare facilities, senior living projects, variety of projects. As I said before, we have 900 people, if more now, doing a variety of projects. And our firm-wide design technology team, which Jude and I are part of, is only 4 people. So imagine 4 people supporting over 140 projects. That sounds like a lot of fun, right?
These projects vary in size, they vary in practice area, they vary in team structure, in team locations. Some of these projects are multiple offices geographically distributed across the nation, across the world. So we have projects that involve Ecuador and New York, and Ecuador and Chicago, or DC and LA.
Every possible mix.
All the way.
Just think about all the map, the worldwide map, every possible mix that you can think about, all the time. So one of the things that we have in our mind is how do we provide timely and consistent QA/QC feedback to our teams?
And also, because there's a few of us, as we're doing these types of interactions with the project team and helping them just in time, we want to provide between the different people that'll be engaging with the different project teams to take it up another level as well and provide a consistent workflow so that whether it's myself or Masha or Scott or James, providing these contact points and providing these types of analysis and review and these reports to the project teams, that we're doing it in a very consistent fashion. That way, any one of us can either tag team into it or present a polished product, not just simply over the shoulder saying, oh, well, you had a meltdown because somebody inserted exploded 42 CAD files. So things like that, it's okay when you're dealing with a crisis, but when you're compiling reports to talk to project managers and the team and everything like that, you want to steer away from doing things like pointing blame. All of us are professionals. We're all working on these projects. We're trying to do the best that we can, and sometimes there's limitations, deadlines, knowledge gap, all sorts of stuff. And we don't want to be attacked for asking for help, because you want to get help because you want it to work better, but you don't want to be blamed for doing something that might not have been best practice or company standard or industry standard or those types of things. So by developing the system, basically it's a way to divorce yourself from that emotional aspect that a lot of people, because this is my project, this is my work, these are my efforts, you don't want to have them hesitate in asking for help. You
Right,
want to
and
be able to engage.
speaking about emergencies, anybody heard about the Revit firefighter syndrome? Yeah, so did we. And we really don't suggest being in response mode all the time. And so a big part of the background to the work that we're presenting today is because we did have meltdowns. We had large teams on deadlines that could not quite work because their file was not in a healthy position, in a healthy condition. And so this is how we developed a reporting system to provide just-in-time QA/QC metrics. And as part of the BIM project report infrastructure, we collect, analyze, and document performance of the project.
Mhm. So this is the kind of structure. Basically, we talk to the team, we get that information from the team, both verbally as a discussion, finding about their stuff, and we'll go through those in a second. We take the BIM model, I'm sorry, kitten killer. We take the BIM and we harvest the information from it, and we start to read into the story about that job, where it is right now, because it might be different than what they envisioned when they wrote the execution plan before they started the work. So where it is now, what's going on, what stage, is it pre-deliverable, is it post-deliverable, is it SD, DD, CDs, where is it at? So we're not able to follow every single project in the entire firm. And a lot of times, as we are doing these types of investigations, sometimes they're kicked off by somebody raising a flag and saying, hey, I need some help over here. Can you give me? Then we take that data, we roll it all up, and we stew on it for a second. We say, okay, what are the things that are important, that are critical going on? And then we fashion it into a deliverable, a PDF, that the document team, if we do multiple of these reports, as projects go on through 1-2 years, sometimes 3 years, sometimes even longer, you might go through this process several times. And what they'll be able to do is to establish a workflow for the PMs, for the project managers, for the office managers, whoever's doing those stagings, saying, okay, this is the type of things that we're seeing on this project, and how are we improving, how are we capitalizing on that improvement. And then we send them that report, let them look at it, get their first ideas, and we'll review it with the team. So these are some of the metrics that we start to talk about with the project teams. And I say talk about, but it's really more about listening, okay? It's really asking a couple of those questions and listening to what they have going on. Finding out where they are, what are the next deadlines, what are the big hurdles that they have coming up, is it changing phase? Are things significantly happening with consultants? Are they not behaving right? Are they doing something different? What's the story? You got to figure out we just had a disruption because we're just coming off of a project hold, and we have all these new staff that aren't familiar with how that file was set up. Or if that file was set up 2 years ago when we had these other standards, which office standards and practices may change over the years. We're always improving the stuff that we're doing. So it's always in development. So it's a moving target, but these jobs, they start and they run with what they have and they progress. So we pull off all of those types of feedback that we get verbally from the project teams. And we listen to that. We take our notes. Then we go and we start to see, okay, how many Revit files are engaged? Is there a core? Is there a shell? Is there a site? Is there consultant models? Are they being all linked together? How are they being linked together? Which ones are of a certain size? Okay, your Revit models above 250 are kind of screaming, saying, hey, something's going on here. When it gets in the 500 range, you're like, okay, we need to pay attention. And they get in the 700 range and they're being linked together, file performance starts to tank. So you start looking at this bigger picture on what's going on and why things are happening. So we start collecting these data points from the BIM. And obviously we collect the project information so we can put the headers on the page and sort our reports and give it to the right teams. But we start harvesting everything from links, imports. Do they have a lot of images? Are they in California healthcare projects where they have a lot of standard OSHPD details that have been stamped and approved and need to be part of the set? Are they really fat? What's kind of going on? You've got to try and get a picture of what's happening. So we harvest this set of information. It's in an Excel file. It's also, you'll have this report online. So there are a few tools that we've set up.
Right, and here we go into more greater detail of what information we're collecting and how exactly we're collecting that information. And there you can see that, let's take a look at the project information module, and the darker blue, so there are three modules. The darker blue module is the really critical stuff that is affecting file performance. Well, I mean, project information is information, it's nice for us to know, but then things like links and imports, those are known troublemakers, right? Number of groups, work sets, those are all big picture BIM management topics, so they are in that dark blue group. Then we have the lighter gray, the second group. Those are items that are classified as items that are both QA/QC and affecting file performance. Things like unplaced views on sheets. Imagine if you have 1,000 views that are not placed on sheets that are going to blow up file size, right? There's going to be an impact. But it's also QA/QC. Why do you need all those 1,000 views that you're not using? Then things like line styles and annotations. We'll show you some examples later, but for example, if you import a CAD file, you are going to end up with a bunch of line patterns that came from AutoCAD, right? So by querying that information, we're able to see that an AutoCAD file was imported. So this is the second group. And then the third group of items, we have program and partition types. So program is rooms and levels. We're querying all the rooms that are in the project. We're mining the levels that were set up in the file, and we're reviewing partition types. And you would be surprised what you learn about your model when you query that information. And you can see here how we collect data. Most of where it says automated, it's automated with Dynamo and Dyno. That's the part we're going to show in a bit. And then the manual portion, we're using CTC tools and just looking at the file and collecting information.
There's some pieces that aren't opened up by the API. There are other things where it's still just truly a manual collection. So.
And we keep adding to this list, and it was really something that emerged organically in a way as we identified that we need to do this type of work, and then we started to say, all right, we need to collect this information. Oh, let's collect that information. So the list keeps on growing, and we're modifying it. And then, and here we have a column that says what are we looking for, and we're looking for items like context and review and clean up and address, and that's where the report is helpful, because in the report we are able to zoom in and pinpoint on particular items from this list and say, well, this item is really important for your project right now, and that item might be, another item might be important for another team at a different time.
Maybe less important depending on what is kind of happening and so on. And this whole area that Masha was talking about here in the program, we're kind of really talking about QA/QC on the BIM, and there are some things that we're seeing in QA/QC that are important to actually how the project is run, how the product of the printed pages, the accuracy, and some other things, we're able to start pull some of those metrics that are of interest to somebody who's reviewing the set. So overridden dimensions and those types of things, where we can start to tap in partition types. Why are there 1 or 2 partitions and there's 80 partition types, generic 1, generic CMTU2, generic 3, partition 1/8, generic whatever, and there's 25 or 30 of those generics with the varying widths with only one object on each. Well, that's a flag. That's a trigger to further engage the team. Why are you doing this? Well, we're still in SD, we're still in pre-design, we're still doing, okay, you don't know that information yet. But if you're in CDs and you've already had several submissions and you're giving this model to the GC or the client, are you planning to, do you have allocated time to clean up this information? How are you, what is your strategy? How are you planning to do, I mean, it's just a talking point to resolve some of the issues in our report. So it's a new area that we're expanding, we're continually growing.
So this is the template, this is the Excel template that we have pre-made and ready to go. And when we run the scripts, that's where the information is going into. And you can see that we have, this is the first tab, this is the report tab, then the data metrics tab is what we showed on the slide before. And every tab contains specific information that relates to that topic.
Originally, when we were starting to do this, it was really a back-of-house tool that was really just for organization of the data that we're collecting so that we can compile it into the report. It's started to grow and develop. And actually, the people who are addressing and fixing the problems after post-report, they find it really useful to be able to find the element ID and what views that they're placed on or these other things going on inside the model that they need to address and clean up. So we started basically a simple Word template, so that way we can provide consistency and professionalism as we deliver this statement, this whole composite of everything that we've done. We're providing it in a very similar way. It's really just kind of a general that we do. There's a couple projects that slightly vary or we modify this. So when we're talking to the project teams, are there any existing documentation that we need to draw upon to fit that story, to understand what's going on? Was there a BIM execution plan? Is there in either the BIM execution plan or talking to the client requirements, is there level design worksheet completed? Are there things that help enable us to look at, potentially draw our focus? Are there things that they are or aren't doing in this stage of the project? So it helps us also formulate that picture. It helps to clear it up for us. Did they do project kickoff? Was in the project kickoff, was there a BIM component that they were talking about, incorporating, how they're going to be doing it, structuring it, all of that?
And so as we mentioned, we collect information using the BIM Manager Suite. This is how we got our original inspiration, but then we wanted to get more information, and so that's how we got into Dynamo and Dyno. So for those of you that never heard about Dyno is a way, this is this logo, Dyno, you can Google it up, Dyno BIM. Dyno automates running Dynamo scripts without opening Dynamo.
Well, you have to have Dynamo open, but you don't have to actually go and launch individually and manually the scripts. Basically, you can bake in some of that, and it helps to automate that. We're actually exploring also other opportunities to even automate the open, running the reports and closing the file. That's some other avenues that we're looking into, but these are all early days.
I have a question. Does Dynamo get to purchase that, or Dynamo?
No, it's free.
No,
So-
Dynamo and Dino and all that, it's all open source and it's all free.
So, for those of you that have seen, we've all seen Dynamo before, even
You don't
yesterday.
have it
Oh, wait, I have to close PowerPoint.
So we've just pulled up one of the Revit models that we have had, we've done these reports on before. So it has some interesting metrics. So this is pre-cleanup, or pre a little bit of the cleanup. So
You've all seen Dynamo before, and as we said earlier, one of the things that we're after is how can we do this fast? I mean, as fast as we can, because we have so many projects, there are so few of us. How can we spend less time generating this data collection? And so with the traditional Dynamo way, you have to open every script, run it, close it, open, close. That's very time consuming.
and we're dumping it from Dynamo into an Excel file.
Yeah.
So basically, this Excel file that you see behind here with all these tabs, it's just going to that page and dumping the data that it's harvested off of the model.
In terms of, I guess, what I wanted to show you guys here is that we're mining information, and every line here is different, like every congestion of data is a different aspect of what we're collecting. Then we are gathering the information. We're using Bumblebee, Archilab Bumblebee package to collect the data. That's all Bumblebee. We collect the data into this Powerhouse node, and then we push it to an open Excel. So all you have to do to prepare this report is really to have the Excel template open, and then run scripts. That's our workflow. I'm going to run this one Dynamo script, and then I'm going to do the other ones from, or some other ones from Dino.
So on those USB keys that went around, and we'll be giving out a few at the end for questions as well. Basically, all this stuff is in there, and in order to successfully leverage or experiment with and look at, the way this is set up is you need to have at least an empty Excel file open. You don't have to have a R-baked template Excel file, but inside our Excel file, the keys location where it's dumping that text actually falls into this kind of pre-formatted. So basically you open up that Excel file, leave it open running, then you open up Dynamo or Dino, run these scripts, and it will fill out that open Excel file. If you have other Excel files open, I suggest you close them.
That's how the system is set up to work right now. And you can see that the Dynamo script put in a timestamp. So we're doing this live. We're reporting project name, we're reporting file name, and there's a bunch of other information that we've also collected by running that script. Now, when we first started doing this work, we had one gigantic script that was trying to do all the different temp things that we wanted to collect, and we realized that it becomes really unmanageable, and unmanageable in terms of running the script. It takes a long time to run, and also to troubleshoot. If you have a lot of stuff in your Dynamo script and one node breaks, the entire definition is not going to work. So this is how we started to break things down, and so I think that we have the 10 must-have Dynamo BIM scripts. If you're doing BIM management with Dynamo, those are the 10 must-have scripts.
And as you know, with Dynamo and Dino and all the different packages, they're constantly updated, they're constantly re-released, and they constantly break each other. So by having them even further refined into these distinct little packets allows you to go in with your Dynamo. If you're not up to Dynamo, that's cool. No worries. We're going to show you methods for harvesting some of this information as well, using the CTC tools and other things you can do. You can go through your warnings and reports. You can open your project, you can see how many links you got and so many things going on. You can do much of what we're doing manually, okay? These are all things that are just leveraged for us because we were doing these reports and it was taking us about a week. Meeting with the teams, talking with them, gathering that information, taking the notes, going and pulling all this stuff, putting it into an Excel file so that it makes sense, trying to lay out that. Now we're doing some of this, we can do a report in basically 2 days.
Or the Excel report in 15, 20 minutes.
Well, we can, but we still need to talk with the, schedule a time to talk with the team and all that. So taking that all together and then formulate our ideas about what's kind of going to help that team moving forward.
One other cool thing about Dino is that it allows you to point to a directory on your network. So as I said, we have a firm-wide team, so I can be working on a script and then say, hey Jude, can you open it up, see how does it look to you? And Jude can open it from his end, and we are seeing the same interface for the script. So that's pretty cool. All right, I'm just going to run the partition script right here, and you'll see how it populates the information. So when it first launches the script, it will show you that it's running, it's in progress, and then once it's done, it colors green. And so you can see that it's in progress, and it usually takes up to 30 seconds to run a script. It's much faster on my workstation. The script has run. There is a start time, evaluation time, so it gives you metrics on how long it took to run your script. And as we mentioned before, the generic partition, right, you can see how you are doing in terms of what partition types you are using here, and then how many partition types you have total and how many walls you have. This is just curious fact, right?
This is that project QA, QC side where you start to, oh, that's interesting. Should they be doing this? What's kind of going, why are they doing this? It leads you to start to ask those questions to the project team to put the information to the
And it's really fun to see how it populates the data where you're not doing much. Right? So that's
Is there anywhere keeping like an LOD piece of information so you kind of, now that you can actually, I don't know if you can query it or not, but are you in the project information, are you keeping track of like what the project's LOD is supposed to be or the deliverable?
I'm sure you could probably put some of that in for the level of detail, but the level of design, where it's design intent, you could simply have something that represents a table, and because you've located it in its final position, that's in 3D, it has all of the assets assigned to it. Its level of design,
right,
300. Level of detail, it's a box, almost. You know, I mean, it might not be the Herman Miller sleek render quality look. So it really depends on what you.
I guess I'm not looking for element by element, but kind of like as a project overall, do you guys keep track of? I mean,
Not yet.
An RFP will call out like we want LOD 300, and it really doesn't translate back to what we do every day. But you guys kind of use that number to gauge or.
well.
It can help us to look for things.
Yeah.
Still, we usually agree to LOD 300. We know that sometimes it will give a bit more information.
Right.
It's a good point though. We're not currently querying for any information that can indicate level of development, but you can query things like families. So you can list all the families that you have and modeling categories and tab categories. This is where you can see some indications of what your model has and how it was put together in terms of categories and subcategories. So that might be
the parameters on each of the families too.
Right.
So if that information isn't entered and filled out, it starts to lead. It may be descriptive of kind of some of the things you have going on. Definitely can be explored.
I'm just going to run the sheet index item. So you can see that as I'm running the script, information reports in one tab, and then it goes to report in this global tab that we showed before, right? So it all kind comes together on the main reporting page, and the script is populating information. And usually when we do this report, we just run the scripts one after the other. It populates the information. We double check some things. We double check, and then we send it out.
Periodically, we'll go through and validate and verify with the C2C tools, as well as just manual verification that something in our Dynamo or something hasn't broken somewhere. There are some towels that you might see that you might know that there's like 4 Revit links and it's coming up 0. Well, maybe your routine, I've had it a few times, has broken because of whatever package that you just updated or the conflict with something else, and you can go then and start to figure it out. But that's back of house.
So when you're running Dino, does it show up as red or something if it doesn't run the script?
Yeah, if there are errors internally in the script, it will highlight yellow. Of course, we over-rehearse this, so we're not going to see any yellow in this demo, but it is quite possible to break stuff.
It's not uncommon.
It's not uncommon.
Right.
Yeah. So I wanted to mention. I wanted to mention the links script, the groups scripts, and the warnings script, because those are slightly more challenging scripts in terms of getting the information and validating the information. So it turned out that with Dynamo, getting information about links is not that straightforward. It's not as straightforward as getting information about walls. All right, so I'm going to show you I'm running the script, and I'm going to show you what information we get. And, okay, so it's completed. So you can see that the information that we get here is as following. We are querying all CAD entities, and we all hopefully know that if a CAD element has a work set and a placement level, most likely it is a legitimate link for AutoCAD, right? But then because if you link an AutoCAD file, it's going to have a work set and it's going to have a placement level. Now, if you insert a CAD file, it's not going to have a work set. And if you insert the CAD file, it's not going to have a placement level because it means that it is in a drafting zone. So by providing the element AT, you can search for that element and you can find it and you can deal with it one-on-one.
For so many years in Revit, when you've exploded or simply inserted an AutoCAD drawing, you weren't able to find it with a standard interface. I could sometimes purge it out if it isn't on a view, if I killed the view or whatever, but it was a real pain. It was very difficult. With the C2C link insert manager, fantastic, it's godsend. And that's actually part of where I got some of the inspiration. And we're doing some of that with Dynamo, but in here, we're able to see the instance ID, what view it's on, what work sets it's been assigned to, and it'll also show image files, what views that those are placed onto, if they're in drafting views and sheets, or where they're at. Also the file size, fantastic. Why is there a 28 megabyte image file that says the client's name in what views? And it's been sized down to fit over here in this on the cover sheet.
So the import link manager tool also has a save report, and it's going to save a report in an Excel file, and this is super helpful. We are trying to get similar information with Dynamo, but it's not as straightforward as we originally thought. So this we rely on using the import and link manager to get that type of information.
And also validate when we do some of these things in Dynamo, and we're able to pull these bits of data. It helps to basically cross-check each other in how we're reporting. So it's just a back of house type of work,
Yep. Then we're running the groups script. just to show you some insights about groups. Okay. So as you know, in Revit we have placed groups that were placed in your model, and groups that you defined in your file, right? And we all know that groups can be model groups and detail groups. And sometimes people can nest them, and nesting can happen in either way, right? It can be a detail group that goes into model group, or model group into another model group. So what we are able to query here, we're able to compare groups that are defined in the model versus groups that are used in the model. And what we noticed by developing this workflow is that if things don't add up, so if you have unused groups, and so we have overall 62 groups, and then so this is 62, and groups unused. So we can say that this minus that comprises all the used groups in the model. Now, if things don't quite add up, it means that there are groups with nesting. This particular model does not have groups with nesting, but usually it will show up here if things don't quite add up.
But this is the type of information when you start to have multiple hundreds of groups that are unnamed and unidentified, and it starts to open up that question and that dialogue. So
I wanted to mention that. And then I wanted to show you guys the warnings. The warning script is more tricky because if you go to
you still
warnings,
have to export it. Sorry.
you still have to export it. There is no one-click solution that will take your HTML report and turn it into a mined data output. But what we can do is we can take the HTML file and we can create an Excel file from it. So, an example of how something like this would look like, and we're taking off the titles, the description, right? And then we're just processing and we're counting how many warnings we have, how many warnings of each type. I'm going to run my.
And those warnings, as you well know, there's certain warnings that are a little bit more important than other warnings. Like line slightly off axis, well, I've got a building that's on a 38-degree placement on the site. Of course, it's going to have some lines slightly off axis. But warnings like host is not in the same, not cutting host, or items where you have these design options or conflicts with other design options and placement of objects on top of each other, duplicate objects, those are kind of flags and so on. So there's modeling practice type of scenarios that you want to start it's another color on the canvas, it's another part of the story that you're trying to define and understand what's going on.
Right, and when you're looking, if you have, let's say 1,000 warnings and you're trying to prioritize your time, if you have this type of summary, you can say, okay, I just have one of those, that's great, I can just get rid of it, right? Or if I have the identical instances in the same place, it's fairly straightforward to address, and so you can really manage your time working with warnings.
And you get the element IDs, and of course with the warning manager you can go through all those. But all of these are metrics and data points that we're collecting, and we're formulating that idea. So we're building that structure, we're understanding what's going on in the project, and then we're taking that and then we're going to create our report in a very meaningful and useful way. So
one other tool that we were inspired by is the type swapper. The type swapper lists all line styles, annotation styles, and dimension styles, and duplicate families. So we don't have any duplicate families in this file, but our text types are fairly straightforward. Dimension styles.
as people are exploding stuff, these have a tendency to grow. So also being able to, unfortunately right now, there's no way to capture this information and get it out other than doing screen grabs. So there's no way to grab those metrics if it's like a crazy insane list without a lot of typing or just a bunch of screen grabs in Photoshop cropping. But very meaningful to be able to access that data.
Yeah, and here's how it looks like on the report side of things. We added one more category that we're looking for, the line patterns. As we mentioned earlier, if you insert CAD files directly, you're going to end up with a bunch of imported line patterns, right? So this is a clear indication that
Somebody's been exploding.
or in just inserting CAD, right? So by looking at this list, we're able to see kind of the back end of things. Any questions about this portion of our presentation?
So is that Dynamo right there, that little
Yep.
dialog box?
This is all Dynamo scripts. Yeah.
Open Revit, run it, and show us how you.
How to do
Well,
that?
after you install it, you
Yeah.
gotta install it, and then you have to have Dynamo as well
Okay. And
running,
that package
because it
is
works
built,
in conjunction with Dynamo.
But you don't need to open Dynamo and go find your folder and then hit run. You just-
No,
Yeah,
you open
That's
Dynamo, you let it sit, and it's waiting for once you've installed Dynamo.
So this Dyno 3.7 runs with Dynamo 9.1. Starting Dynamo 9.1, you cannot go backwards, and same with Dyno. It used to be differently. You used to be able to run different versions of Dynamo scripts with Dyno, but now it's they go hand in hand. So Dyno 3.7 goes with Dynamo 9.1. And next upgrade, you will need to upgrade both applications. So it is a bit, it's a bit time-consuming to set it up. But once the system is set up, you can just run the script and get stuff done faster.
It's really not quite to the level where we're able to deploy it to all staff, so that everyone can run these reports. It's so bleeding edge that it's always changing, and there's so much trying to keep it working, that it's really just for our process in doing these reporting things that we're leveraging tools like this. And it's absolutely not necessary. You could do this all manually. This is just a tool that we're leveraging to pull these data points. So it's just one of the ways that we're doing it. But it's by no means the only way.
And just to give you a reference point, a year ago, we could not be doing what we're doing now. Dynamo Bumblebee was released 6 months ago or so. Dyno was released 5 months ago.
Question
It's
in the
all new stuff.
Two things. One, quick point on Dyno. It's not good if you need to do user input on a script. The script has to be
Right.
self-sufficient.
Right.
It won't cost user input, so if people want to use it like that. Question, you mentioned Bumblebee. What other packages did you use in development of your script, or is that really the only external package that you use?
No, we use several. It's there is a screen grab and on the USB key, the documentation. We primarily rely on 4 packages. We rely on Bumblebee, the Archilab Greenshaw package, JBE package for get line styles, and the Lunchbox. There's one. We're using only one node from Lunchbox, but you'll need to install that. So, but primarily we're heavily relying on Conrad's packages for Bumblebee and Archilab Greenshaw.
And those packages with the actual versions of each of those packages, it's on that thumb drive, and we'll probably put it into that zip. It's just basically says which of the packages we have on there, if you're interested. So what we do is we take all of this metrics, all of this information that we got from the team, we mull it through, we formulate that story, we paint the brush, we figure out through our best practices, and we've been in the industry for a little while, so we're very familiar with industry-wide best practices, and don't insert AutoCAD files, things that'll slow down or hinder performance, hundreds of groups, fat images that are sized down, that they're not rendered, they're not sized appropriately for the sheets that they're placed onto, for the ones that are absolutely necessary. Those, I mean, all of these different types of best practices throughout the industry, we're just applying those and then formulating this idea. So that's what this analysis is, and basically we take all of that. Once we've got that idea and that picture, a lot of these results that Masha was just running are in this ambulatory care clinic down in New York.
No, it's another building that we're running. But with the report, we're going to show you a complete report package for this particular project. And when you land on ambulatory care clinic in Brooklyn, it's a new construction. There is an existing building on site, an existing healthcare facility. They're going to take that building down, and this is actually now under construction. It's 160,000 square feet, 5 floors. A bit lower than the current facility, and this project was done out of the New York office with some other people from Stanford helping out here and there. The project team was 4 people initially. When the project got started, it was nice and small and cozy, but then as the deadline was near, they ended up with something like 15 people on one file, and that's where we were invited to help out to figure out what's going on with the model and why they're having slow down performance stuff, and so that's what you're going to see next.
So in that report, in that structure, basically what we do is we have the main page of the report, which most of the higher level staff that are actually that need to do the staffing assignments and say, okay, this stuff of cleanup is going to take 40 hours assigned to the BIM manager on that project, the project BIM manager, the project liaison, BIM liaison, whoever, and they're going to be assigned that task of doing the stuff that is urgent and the stuff that will improve performance. And then the rest of the team can start, so that they can start breaking this stuff down. They may not go into all of the nitty-gritty and the weeds, which we do in this report. But we break it down. We have a cover page of all of the metrics that we've collected, what's kind of showing, and we have these little comments, basically red, yellow, and green. So red is, you kind of need to pay attention to this. These are things of interest. Yellow are, you gotta watch, and then green are smoking good, awesome, keep it up, and don't let things get out of hand. Now we break
There's
it.
not much green on this report.
Well, this is why we chose this specific report. And then here we have an executive summary, which are basically very composed, necessary actions, as I specifically said. These are X, Y, and Z. You have to do this now. If you don't do this now, we don't go into the if you don't do this now, but it will have severe impact upon your project. Then there are things that may not cause your project a deep 6 or fail, but are things you really need to pay attention to and will improve the performance for everyone involved. And at a PM level, at a office manager level, at a leadership level, talking to the hours that staff are spending waiting to access the files, that, you know, you've got 10 people or 14 people working on this file, and it takes a half an hour to open. Well, you open it at least once a day, and you have this time period for saving, times 14, that's simple math. Okay, you've got X number of hours. If I can cut that in half or better by improving the quality of the file, that's savings. Well, you shouldn't have been there in the first place, but forget about that. We're not pointing fingers, we're not pointing blame, we're trying to make things better. So that executive summary basically lays it out for them. And then we start to get into the weeds, okay? But we break this down not in a standard way across every single report we do. We break this down in what is most important to those teams. So how did we do that executive summary? This is in the strategy of how that executive summary is laid out so that they can have the stuff that makes most sense to do right now because of the inserted AutoCAD files. What are those instance IDs? They don't have to go look up an Excel file. They don't have to go look over here. They don't have to look at this other Dynamo. They don't have to look at any scripts. It's right there. The PM or the PA job captain, whoever, can hand it to the person who's being assigned this task. They can even take this red market and say, this is going to be this expected this many hours, and they can start building it into the project plan to address as it's moving. Because the project's not done at SD, sometimes it'll go on hold, but whatever. We're trying to provide feedback and input to making this stuff better. So what we'll do is we'll have a statement. Sometimes those statements will reference existing for validity. If we, okay, don't trust me, don't trust what I'm saying. This is what the industry is saying. This is what Autodesk Help is saying. This is what Augie is saying. These are what these cited references that have gone through over the years that inserted AutoCAD files are bad. Here's a couple links. Doesn't take much, just has a couple hyperlinks and there are the paths or whatever. And the explanation for somebody who's probably not Revit savvy enough to actually talk the talk as we do. So being able to break it down like that is meaningful and useful to those leadership and understanding
We're
that.
out of time, so
Yep.
just a few examples from this particular project of particular things that we're seeing here. So you can see, for example, that this project had over 1,400 unplaced views, and they had over almost 8,000 line patterns. Clearly an indication of inserted CAD. Yeah, we don't see this stuff unless you run this type of reports. I mean, we keep repeating ourselves with the inserted CAD. Unfortunately, it's one of our biggest issues, and particularly in the New York office. So that and groups. So this is an example of where you can see the groups with nested. You can see that they have some stuff like that. But then this report was generated about 2 months after the Word report was put together. So you can see that they addressed some things. They addressed the things that we asked them to address, but we did not highlight the issue with the line patterns back then.
Just out of curiosity, how many of these things got cleaned up with the purge? I mean, like what this purge, because like if they're not using that line type anymore.
It's line pattern. Line patterns, you cannot, there's no tool within Revit that lets you to clean up line
Purge
patterns.
won't clean out
Line patterns.
line style, line pattern.
Yeah. So there are specific add-ins, and there are Dynamo scripts, and yesterday we talked to CTC about maybe them adding something to this purge imported line patterns, but it's not a native feature within Revit. And then warnings, you can see that they used to have many more. They addressed some of that stuff, and then that's the line patterns. So that goes to just a quick summary of when we hand off the report. We have 5 more minutes. We started to talk about some of that, Jude. So we send them the report, and then we schedule time to sit down and review to make sure that they understand where to look for that information, understand what the impact is, and then understand how to clean it up. And again, if we can clean it up with a script, or if we can clean it up automatically, sure, we'll do it for them, or we'll teach them how to do it themselves. But a lot of those items require manual input, like warnings. You need to know what's up. With partition types, you need to know the project. And this is where we're taking this work next. We are revising our Revit 2016 template, and this is the splash screen for our next generation template. And so we have a new version of our scripts that work with this generic annotation component, generic note
It's
block.
just a note block
It's just
that
note
has shared parameters in it, so that it's just dumb text that's actually from our Dynamo scripts as they're running. They already have access to the Revit Okay, so what they have, as they run and process, they're basically updating this timestamp, and then all of the fields that are in black are automated through those routines. Ultimately, we would love to get a process in the future, possibly, that we're able to batch process these things and have this maybe updated on a daily basis so that it runs overnight. And for many of our jobs, especially the jobs of concern, kind of have this metric available, like these are things you, if you're not already aware of, you probably should be monitoring. Now, some of these things, as we mentioned, are not able to be done automatically, but there are opportunities possibly to get some of them, maybe not all of them until a couple of releases of Revit further.
Yeah, the one cool thing about this feature is that this data is piggybacking on our existing Dynamo script. So as we're pushing information to Excel, we're pushing information to this particular node block. And we even have a few minutes for questions.
So with those questions, we have those 2 keys out there, as well as 4 more up here. So any questions?
So I guess what kind of stuff are you guys doing? I mean, you guys have standards, and how do you implement standards based off of this data?
There's, for me, standards are kind of a gray area. There's standards of practice, but every company standards versus an industry standard versus a client standard. If everyone's got a standard, is it really standard?
So company standards like don't bring in CAD files. I mean, obviously
processes and workflows,
Yeah, no, we
absolutely, you
have
can
standards.
standardize some of those.
We have standards, but we also have over 400 users. So how do we communicate with every person in our firm?
You have 400 Revit users?
Yeah.
Or okay.
Yeah, well,
There's a lot.
probably more, and there are only 4 firm-wide support people, right?
Okay.
And so it's cool if we can get FaceTime with every person, and you know, we send emails, but people sometimes don't read emails, and I mean, even if you meet with somebody in person, they may choose not to follow your suggestion. So we have protocols, we have everything documented, but we're dealing with people here, and you all know how people are just people.
For the really good teams that are actually extremely diligent, they have a lot of this inside their project plan, and by having a couple of these reports periodically, potentially triggered by the QA/QC reviews that are underway for the project teams, so that they can actually affect the quality of the result. They can then start to track, because it's in an official documentation format, and then they can, the PM, anybody, any leadership level person can pull out 4 of those reports that have occurred throughout this project. Well, why did we lose money? Or why was this one more successful than this other one that we were doing? Well, if you have some documentation of this nature, you're able to actually provide completely factual information versus speculation. Oh, well, Nancy and Joe and Susan were thrown on that team, and they had those other problems on this other job, and they just pulled and dragged and did. Well, that's all hearsay. That's not really the
We have
cause.
time for maybe one more information.
The gentleman, like, went back.
We have.
USB drives.
All right.
I was thinking that once you get the automated report, you know, where you can do it every day, that would be potentially a really good way to not enforce but encourage best practice, because it doesn't matter how many times you clean up the file if someone's, you know.
Absolutely, that's part of why we wanted on that splash screen so transparent to the team and saying, hey, you know, these are things that are really important to the quality and the performance of your project. So if they aren't already privy to it, it's a way to, it's on the open splash screen. It's the first thing that they see before they do anything else, and it's a very quick glance. And you can see, I would love to be able to have those as we set thresholds or something to go from different colors.